Jennings' team was led by All-American John Lang, and the Vikings were undefeated at 16-0 in league play. The last team in conference history to do that. By the time that season ended, Augustana was 29-2 and had finished third in the NAIA National Tournament in Kansas City. The 1972-73 men's basketball team has a great representation this evening. This time we'd like to ask the following people to come forward, and you can take the chairs on either side of the podium. Team trainer Bill Keel, Sports Information Director Jim McGrath, Assistant Coach Dave Langrock, Head Coach Jim Borcherding, team members Tom Myler, Mike Colsey, Neil Johnson, Jim Van-Castile, Bruce Hamming, Chuck Menzer, Mark Brooks, and John Lang. And John Lang will have the honor of serving as the spokesperson for the group and having a conversation with Dave. Once Dave's done visiting with John, we'll give each of you your plaques. And
John, 40 years ago, you were together with this group, sitting around with you. Does it seem that long?
In many ways, no, particularly tonight, it's an opportunity for us to get back together again. We have not been together very often. And in fact, this group, with the folks here, this is the first time. Granted, I know there's a few artificial, I think, Chuck, we've got an artificial hip, don't we? You know, so there's a few artificials going to Mark, don't do that one yet, so we have some of those. Vandy's looking at an ankle, so I suppose that makes it seem like 40 years. But I'm sure I speak for everyone here. Some of the events and some of the memories are still as clear as if they happened yesterday.
Heading into that 72-73 season, you were coming off a good year, and I'm sure you thought that the team was going to be pretty good. Did you ever dream that the season would turn out the way that it did?
We had very high expectations for the 72-73 team. This thing, and I think we'll talk about it a little bit more later, this didn't just happen overnight. This had been forming, and Augustana had accomplished his first conference championship, albeit shared with Illinois Wesleyan. And then particularly the year before, getting to be mildly high expectations, particularly as far as it related to the conference championship, and then we immediately went out and started, I think, 2-2. And many considered us out of the race. And by the way, I think that was the last loss for several years in the conference. The thing gained momentum, won the conference, went to the NAI, won the district, and went down to the nationals. Now, the CCIW had not been having any success at the national tournament level. And we came out and won the first one. You know, it was 32 teams down there. And again, the NAI was probably not a place that we were supposed to be competing, but we didn't know that. And then in the second one, Vandy did what I still say is the most important shot in Augustana basketball history, because he put us into the debate. Now, 3/4 of the teams have been eliminated. This has excited our fans. We went from maybe a couple dozen to there were well over 1,000 as we went up against the #1 team in the country in that March of 1972. Came out of the gate immediately, went down by 11 or 12 points. Looks like this whole thing was going in the tank. Coach called timeout. Probably went through a little strategy, but I also recall one of the things that he said at the timeout, he just wanted to say this. These folks came to see you, and you owe it to them. And that team, that game, crawled our way back in there, went into the locker room ahead, ended up losing by a half a dozen points to the #1 team in the country. But with the situation where we had no seniors on the team, and we had a freshman, Bruce, that had been coming in that whole tournament and proving what a dominant player he was, We had very high expectations for 72-73. In fact, coaches have said it was nothing short of a national championship. So yes, we did. Now, it's one thing to have those aspirations, and it's another thing to achieve it. But again, under them, you can see the results. We did not meet our goals, but we had a pretty good year.
You were pretty good. John, you mentioned fortunate. Obviously, you can't talk about Augustana basketball without talking about fortune. But Dave Langrock, so instrumental on the bench there. And you look today, and I look down at benches in college basketball, and there's 13 coaches, it seems like, on the sideline, and there were those two former college roommates. And what were they like?
Well, as probably most know, Coach Borshby was rather emotional.
A little bit.
But a bunch of us were together on the 25th anniversary of this team. And Jim Vannigan, Jim said something at that time, and it was really true. Through all of that, and yes, there was some yelling, and yes, there was a lot. There was never once a swear word. In that whole time, never once would he swear at us. Now, there were probably some code words that we did. But there was, shoot the banjo, and there were those kinds of things, but there was never one cuss word. He was a very disciplined, basic coach. It was fundamentals. I mean, we had 2 lines of layups. We had a lot of defensive shuffle, a lot of full court 3-on-3. By the way, that's 3/4 of what was a successful Ralph Miller's practice. I mean, it was basic. It was down to details and very regimented. Coach Langrock, and I learned this from others, had the ability to go on the road, watch one play, diagram the whole offense. He could dissect an opponent both collectively and individually, which was why the scouting reports that we had when we were going to play somebody were second to none. The two, yes, the relationship went back a long way. They fed off each other to a great degree, and never let us get any egos.
You talked about the support that you had in 1972. When you went back in 1973 to Kansas City, the Quad City support at that time was almost legendary. And we have a picture out there of when you came back with your third place trophy. What was it like to capture the imagination of the Quad Cities throughout that whole season?
We were 19, 20, 21-year-olds. It was crazy. There was a lot of passion. Kansas City, our students loved it. In the first year, they got 2 days off. They quickly realized that if we were successful, they were getting a free 1 week off of classes. So we were real talking. But the emotion, particularly in Kansas City, the setup, we played the Municipal Auditorium. That was at the time the home of the Kansas City Kings. It is the first place that John Wooden won a basketball title with UCLA also. But because of all the teams, even though this was a 11,000, 12,000 foot arena, there wasn't enough locker rooms you were going to go and change. So with about a block square park in the front of the auditorium, the teams were in the hotels around, and you dressed in your hotel. You would be going into a locker room for pregame and halftime talks, but you would be coming out of your hotel and going into the auditorium. We would come out of where we were staying, and there would be 1,000+ Augustana fans. It was very passionate. Sometimes led by Bruce's father, Dr. Hamming. He was out there too at that time. One of the best, sometimes the best professor on this campus. There was one other thing a friend told me, and during that time, he had a night class, history class, with Dr. Ross Paulson, PhD from Harvard, and it was a 6 to 9 class. break about 7, and Dr. Paulson addresses the class, and he says, we'll be taking 10 minutes. And after that, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going to the basketball meeting. You know, also at that time, you know, I think we need to remember this was before there was an ESPN. This was before all the proliferation of sports on television. And this is a very passionate area for basketball. And people like teams that are successful. Rock Island was a horrible place to have to come and play. You know, because the place was going to be packed, the fans were going to be passionate, and they were going to face a pretty good team. And if they had to face the two officials, Sonny Gamber and Jim Ryan, then they would be facing the student body cheering the officials.
John, there's so many memorable moments in that 72-73 team, in that season, but you know, one game that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle was that 12-6 game up at Carroll. And not only was that game amazing, 12-6, I think it's more amazing that Chuck Menzel was in double figures. He had 10 points.
What can we say?
You were open, right, Chuck?
No, it was, you know, we'll go back to the coaches. The coaches we had, we always had the Wisconsin road trip. It was going to be Carthage on Friday night and Carroll on Saturday night. Those two teams, we had told we grained in Rock. I don't know what it was.
It was bad.
It was
Really
bad.
bad.
And they've been prepared us all week that we aren't going to see a slowdown when we go to Wisconsin. And granted, Illinois teams going to Wisconsin would get Wisconsin officials, which we would say was probably not our favorite thing either. So we had gone into Carthage on Friday night, and that was in the 30s somewhere. You know, we won by 3 points. Okay, we won by 3 points. They had done it. They had done a pretty good job with this. They had done it, though, at least to attempt to win. You know what? To me, what's neat about the Carroll game? First of all, we won. And the fact is, if they hadn't done that, we wouldn't be ever talking about Augustana and Carroll that year. Had they not been able to make that game 12-6, we would have remembered it.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing, we were so far away. So at least we got done early and got back to Rock Island.